Hello, you're listening to Two Old Chuffs, A Tale of Two Hospices, the podcast from Cornwall Hospice Care. I'm Tamsin Thomas.
And I'm Gina Starnes.
And today we're going to be talking about the importance of reaching out to communities and in particular to the LGBTQIA plus community, that being lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, asexual. Now, our logo, I checked this morning, says caring for our community. And I read that as being just Cornwall being our community. But it's so much more, isn't it?
I think it's about us really being inclusive, and caring for our community is about everybody. And we want everybody who needs to be in touch with the hospice to actually feel that welcome and feel that it's relevant to them.
And to feel that we're here for every person.
Yeah, absolutely, Tamsin.
That's quite a challenge, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think people are busy with their lives and busy with kind of their families and their homes and their own issues. But actually, I think as a hospice we can reach out in lots of ways that people don't often realise, and it's really important for us to make sure that our information, our literature, our welcome is there for everybody.
So we're particularly looking at the LGBTQIA plus community today because there's this amazing report come out from our umbrella body, if you like, Hospice UK.
That's right. Yeah, it's a really timely report for us. It's just making sure that hospices are really thinking about what they're doing to be inclusive.
And am I right in thinking, didn't this all start and then get stalled by COVID?
I think certainly for us, I mean, we were looking, at how we become more inclusive and making sure that we are relevant to everybody. And we were able to do lovely things like go and spend some time with our friends and colleagues at Newquay Pride. And then before we could kind of move that on a little bit, COVID happened and actually the world closed down for a little while. But actually it feels really timely now to pick that up again.
And I think this is the moment to introduce one of our colleagues, Mike Thomas, who's our education facilitator, because Mike, with great glee the other day, was holding a copy of this report, I Want to Be Me, and you were beaming and you said to me, "This is my Bible." So tell us all about it.
Thank you. Well, it is my Bible, and Hospice UK are delighted that we collectively have taken that approach, that it is our Bible. Interestingly, I was preparing and writing a session on gender, sex and sexuality prior to the release of the article, and then coincidentally the article was published, which was wonderful, because it is so well referenced and so well anecdotally referenced that it really supports the work, the overall aim of Cornwall Hospice Care in relation to inclusivity, of including everybody, irrespective of their personal gender, sex and sexuality. And therefore, the article itself, full of excellent anecdotes, and full of, most importantly, 6 key points that Hospice UK recommend for hospices to adopt, with 19 individual recommendations to make sure that we are doing things right. At the end of the day, we're human, we make mistakes, we're not perfect, but the important thing to demonstrate to the community as a whole is that we're working with them and that we're striving to make it right for everybody.
And there was a really interesting case study, isn't there, in there? They speak to people who have had experience of hospice care.
Yes, indeed. There's a lovely case study of a daughter and a trans father. And they went through several journeys, both not just at the end at the hospice, but through the acute setting. And what was highlighted very much so was the fact of that during Pip was now a woman. Pip was never offered personal hygiene care, unfortunately, in an acute setting, and went 10 days without being offered any personal hygiene care. And the concern was the fact that most of it was around the fact that maybe staff were anxious because Pip was trans. Different case study altogether when Pip came to the hospice. Although one of the exhausting parts of Pip's journey was having to explain his transition to all and sundry, which at the end of somebody's life can be very, very exhausting and isn't necessarily what needs to be done. But irrespective of that, the overall care from the hospice and the respect was fantastic and supportive, apart from various things of the use of pronouns, etc., what to call Pip, and periodically his daughter would refer to her as dad or father, which very often confused the staff. So it's that minute detail that we need to address, and that we need to make sure that we will get it wrong, but that we're open and transparent about it, and that we're open to learning, and that we're there to support. And we don't know everything. Help us to know more.
And you call it your Bible. Why? Because it's going to guide you in guiding everyone at Cornwall Hospice Care?
I call it my Bible because it is so well written and so well referenced. And it has so many points, not just the case study, but for instance, the consultant in palliative medicine who's now a trans woman, and that particular person's experience. And it looks at everything from attitudes and aptitudes with regards to staff, and most importantly, looks at policies and guidelines in relation to staff within a hospice setting, and what should happen, and how the executive board and the whole of the hospice management should accept and move with this in order to make sure that we are doing the best that we can do.
I'm delighted to say that also with us today is a great friend of our charity, George Kestell. And George, you've kindly said you'll share your experience because your partner Mark came to Mount Edgcumbe Hospice. Did you feel included?
Tamsin, yes, absolutely. We had a slightly unusual route here because Mark had worked on the fundraising side with the hospice for a few years, so we were already known as a couple. But saying that, once we were here, I was totally treated as if I was a spouse. There was no questions, there were no uncomfortableness, and Mike was saying that sometimes questions do have to be asked to know how to treat somebody, but with us it was absolutely seamless. So yeah, I felt totally included, right from the moment that we came in and were admitted, right to the end when Mark died, and how I was looked after, including having counselling after as well. So as far as I'm concerned, it was seamless. You wouldn't have been able to tell if I'd been a wife for 20 years or if I was a partner.
No, you said something to me one day about you were treated like a spouse.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
That any communication that one might need to make with sort of next of kin or a husband or wife, that's just exactly how I was treated. I was, I was his partner. I was the person that was to be with him all the time, and every communication was made with me included at some point.
What do you make of what you've heard so far this morning? Are we doing the right thing?
Yeah, I really wondered, when you asked me to come in about this, I really wondered why, because my experience is so positive in that I thought you'd already got everything right. But then I was just thinking as, a gay guy, a gay couple who were already known here. So we actually had quite a bit of background already. But where you have a trans situation, that's so much more difficult to try to work with and to know how the person should be treated and how they want to be treated. So I thought, gosh, well, the hospital's already got things really bang on, but I hadn't looked at the bigger picture.
I think that's what we want to do really, and actually things are they are changing quite quickly. You know, we are hearing so much more about the changes and the difficulties that people are having to go through, whether it be, you know, schools or work environments or hospital environments, and the stories and examples that are in the report, Mike, are, you know, they're not dissimilar to ones that I think we've heard before. But I think it's about us just really trying to get it right, and I'm delighted that actually that's your experience, George. That's how we want it to be for everybody. But I think it's about the realisation for us that it's not, and I think you know, they're difficult questions sometimes for people to ask, and certainly at end of life, you know, as clinicians, we need to get to know people sometimes pretty darn quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, and that's not always easy for those people in the bed or in the room to trust you that quickly. You have to have that kind of air of confidence so that people will talk to you. So I guess we're kind of used to doing that, aren't we, Mike, as clinicians, because actually, you know, somebody dying is pretty personal, and we do need to get to know them. But actually, for me, asking about somebody's, you know, private side of their life is a whole different level. And I think actually we must try and support our staff, which is why you're looking at your kind of teaching and education sessions to give people that confidence.
Yeah, very much so. It's important that I liaise and reach out to all staff, because at the end of the day, there are values, there are judgments, and that's not a criticism. We need to work with those. We need to understand what they may be, and we need to be able to support those people. And as Gina rightly said, dealing with somebody from diversity at the end of their life, we have to cross those bridges sometimes really quickly. So we're looking further afield to spread the word so that we can start working with the community and to see exactly what it is they identify, what they would feel they would want. And that includes, you know, we've talked about the sociological changes and how quickly things are changing. You know, we talk about LGBTQIA+. I liken it to LGBT A to Z now, because it's changing so radically quickly. And that's important to be aware of that. So it's irrespective of that. It's getting out there in the community, flying the flag for Cornwall Hospice Care and saying, look, we're here, tell us what you need, what you want. If this was to happen, what would you want, what would you need? And I'm delighted when we watch the television today to see that more agencies are talking about end-of-life care, whether it be Marie Curie or it'll be lovely if they can expand a little bit further to include diversity, so that everybody can be included. But I'm delighted that we've moved that much further on. So as a hospice, our plans, and I'll talk about when I'm invited to, about our interaction now with Cornwall Pride and how we're planning to move forward with that.
I think one thing you brought up there, I think it's really important that us as a community, that we know what we want. As far as I was concerned, I did wonder when we were coming here how what steps I would have to take to sort of say what our relationship was. I hadn't really realised that as soon as I walked in, I realised actually there was lots of people I recognised, so we were already known. So we had that in place, unbeknown to me already. But that's, with most people, that's not going to happen. And I think as a community, if we are heading towards this, you know, as an individual, we need to know what do we want. For example, in a trans situation, what sort of care do you need, and be able to sort of say that. So as individuals within the community, and I know we've talked earlier perhaps about the veteran community as well, so not just the queer community, I think we need to be there and say, well, right, what do we need to, and be open to be able to say, I do need this, I do need that, this is the group around me, and to be able to just openly and happily openly say what we want, and that means that the clinicians know where to go and say, right, okay, that's right, we can deal with this.
I think that would be, it would be a huge help. I guess what I would say with that is it's very difficult to get anybody to talk about what they want at end of life, and to be able to be to kind of to voice that. But I think you're right. If we can reach out and say, look, it's really important that somebody knows that this is important to you at end of life, and it's okay for them to tell us. At the hospice, we're very lucky that we can try and make things work in a way that's different. If you're working in a busy hospital ward at Trelisk, or we are lucky that we can kind of make our rooms more friendly, more personable than perhaps you can in a busy surgical or medical ward. But actually, we need to know that it's just as important for us to know what music people want, who they want to visit, what they want to share, what's the private between, and getting that information just makes it so much easier for everybody to feel that they are contributing in the right way at such an important time.
And I think as a community, we need to be able to be quite open and say, not worry about saying. And I think that's possibly one of the issues. It is the difference between an acute hospital situation and a hospice. Where in an acute situation, it is difficult. You haven't got 10 minutes to say, well, this is how I feel, and this is how my partner or my trans parent or whatever feels. But here, you have got that situation. In a hospice situation, you can actually sit down with somebody and say, well, this is what we do, this is what we're thinking. And that makes a difference. And I think I think we need to be aware that facility is there, that your ears are open and will listen.
Yeah.
I think you've hit on a very valuable point. No place is going to be home.
No.
If home is your love and your passion, no place, no matter what we do, is going to be home. And you're right, the hospices have a different approach and are able to facilitate as much as possible compared to that of an acute setting. We're fortunate that we work very closely with both community and with the acute hospital setting. So we liaise very, very closely with the palliative care team, for instance, within the acute hospital. And we are very realistic that an acute hospital setting, as Gina said, will never be as much as people would want it to be. It's a different pressure, it's a different arena. So what we have to do is to look at that, and look at that realistically with the people we're working with from the diverse community, and say, okay, what's the best thing that we can possibly achieve in this situation? You're going in with an urgent medical or surgical need. That's going to be dealt with. It's going to feel very impersonal at times. You may be fortunate enough to be seen, if you need to be seen, by the specialist palliative care team. And they will support, and if the transition to the hospice is appropriate, that's hopefully a seamless approach. But it's not always going to happen. So we have to work realistically with reality, and try to make the best out of the worst situation. And that's not a criticism of an acute setting, it's the reality. May I talk about meeting with, I've recently this week met with the communications manager from Cornwall Pride, which was a great, we're both motivated. I don't know how we both kept our feet on the ground, but we were both very motivated about what could potentially happen. And I came away from it feeling this is totally appropriate, totally right, and totally about working together. So a big picture, a big overall picture for the future for this year is for the hospice presence at all the major town pride events, with our gazebo, with our Cornwall hospice, and getting out there to talk to the LGBTQIA plus community, plus diversity, anybody. And I mean literally flying the flag, because one of the lovely things that you would have seen in certain shops, they'll have logos in the window for people who have dementia, so that if they're threatened in any way, they can go into that particular shop or building and be supported, because the staff there are dementia friends, dementia aware. We want to do the same with our volunteers, with our shops, etc., so that they are LGBTQIA plus aware and supportive. So therefore something like a logo, a sticker, which Cornwall Pride are going to now introduce into shops that are gay friendly, and it would be most appropriate, for instance, for our charity shops. So there's lots of potential, and of course, you know, we won't necessarily reach 100%, but if we can get out there, hopefully we can speak to the person who maybe will come to Pride, maybe will hide in the background at Pride. We can go to meetings. I've offered our services, and also to bring them in to our sessions, because they do fantastic sessions on inclusivity, so that it can be a joint venture. So it's not necessarily the hospice taking the lead or Pride taking the lead, but we're working together. And that, for me, and I'm sure for the hospice too, I can speak for the hospice, would be the most important thing, that we move these things together as a collaborative. And because one thing that was illustrated to me on the beginning of the week was that there's lots of splinter groups, but they're not necessarily dovetailing together. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. You know, we don't want to go off at a tangent and waving the flag for, you know, Cornwall Hospice Care on its own. We want to be part of that community.
I think it's interesting. You often do get, in every sort of walk of life, sort of splinter groups do come off. But I think the most important thing here, and with a discussion like this, is that we're getting it out via the podcast to everybody. So that perhaps in your family you may have got someone who is diverse in whatever way, but then if you get in a hospice situation, they may well have heard this discussion or heard of the documents by one means or another, and make that support, because that's the important thing, is the people around, the more distant people, if they know and just say, well, you can say that because I've heard about this. Yes. So you've got it is the integration of absolutely everybody in the county, if not the country, is what we're looking for. Because if it becomes the norm, then other people, you know, an in-law or a friend will just say, well, yeah, you can say, you need to say that to the staff and it'll be okay. Yeah. So it's getting that so that it becomes the norm is where I think we need to be getting. Yeah, so being at the Pride events, and I think Cornwall is amazing on having these little, dare I say, events all over in all the towns is brilliant. It's a brilliant idea, actually, because you know that works for us, I think, quite well. Yes. And just getting the conversation held, because you know friends and relations do go along with the queer person to a Pride event, and so if that's in their head, you know, they'll be the ones that are perhaps not thinking of all the other detail, but just be able to say, well, it's all right, we'll mention that. Yeah, they won't be anxious or apprehensive. And then you get what happens then on a clinical side is the patient then feels safe, and that's what you're trying to do here. Absolutely. More than anything else. You're not curing anybody, you're just making people feel safe.
Yeah. Yes. And it's just, you're absolutely right, George. It's about people being safe to have those conversations with people that they know that they'll get an understanding response, and it doesn't matter what that is. So, you know, actually we talk about a lot of difficult things with people at the end of life, and that end of life journey time is difficult enough, but actually, you know, often it's that time before. So, you know, there are really difficult times, I would imagine, in people's lives who are diverse, and you know, that they have to have those tricky conversations with family and with friends, and it's about understanding people's story about where they've come from is so important to get the end bit right. It's like that final bit in the jigsaw.
We need to be addressing inclusivity, and I think having a session like this gives the opportunity. My session this afternoon is only brief, it's 20 minutes. They range from 20 minutes to 3 hours. More recently, I was fortunate enough to teach over 300 undergraduate nursing students who were tremendous in their attitudes and aptitudes and their interaction with me in relation to this subject matter. And yeah, it's if we as a hospice team, including volunteers, shops, etc., if we are educated and if we can identify individuals' strengths and weaknesses and the support they will need, then they can then cascade that out to their own families. It's a bit like advanced care planning, isn't it? If we address our own advanced care plan, then it makes us more comfortable to talk about it with our families and significant others. So, or at least to be aware of it, so that should the subject come up on television, we can say, oh, that's interesting, what do you think? We can do exactly the same. So there's this lovely cascade, this lovely continual openness and conversation. It may not be comfortable, there may be challenges. I look forward to the challenges. But because to date, everything has been so positively accepted. To the degree, on one occasion, I had a mother came up to me, I found out that she was a mother, having done the session, and she said, oh, can I shake your hand to say thank you for the session? And I said, yeah, of course, she said, no, actually, she said, I don't want to shake your hand. She said, I want to hug you, she said, because she said, my son is now trans, and she said, you've made it so much easier, and I'm so pleased you're doing this. So, there will be a percentage where it may not be comfortable for whatever reason, and that's to be expected. But I think, yeah, it's got to be a cascade and knock-on effect. Let's get the staff sorted. Let's get out there. The first Pride this year is in Falmouth in April. I want to be there. I would love what Cornwall Pride were asking was whether our volunteers would integrate with their volunteers. So we've got a lot of educative work to do and supportive work to do. But I'm very, very charged and excited about it.
I always feel as if people come from the right place, from an educated and understanding place, that you ask the question in the right way. And I'd be interested to hear kind of your view as well, George. But, I think actually it's about people being... You know when somebody's asking you the question any question in the right way, and I think that's what's important, and that's what I would want certainly staff here at the hospice to do. I think the majority of people would absolutely do that, and I think your sessions, Mike, help to kind of to bring what's often a bit of a taboo subject into every day, really, and I just anything that we can do to help that kind of that honest conversation, and I think for me it's about those questions coming from a place of real desire to make a difference.
And it's also having the confidence that the staff are quite confident and quite happy to be able to say something.
Absolutely.
So that the whole topic is embedded within the care setting or any setting, really. So, I think this is the important thing. So having a presence at all the Pride events, I think is really good, because perhaps we do think of the hospice as being separate. It's certainly sort of slightly separate within the whole care world, it is something that is sort of a little to one side, and that's how it is. And I suspect, as just an average member of the public, I probably thought that at one time. So being able to integrate it in a diverse situation is absolutely what has to be done, just to get the whole conversation embedded in society.
I think people often don't think about hospice until they're in that position. And actually what we want to try and do with our outreach and our community services and our, kind of signposting is to just put us out there a little bit earlier in people's thinking, so that actually when it does come to that point, that actually they don't need to do that kind of wondering about what it is or what it might be like, but actually that they know that, and then we can actually pick up at that point.
I just want to go back on a comment of Mike's earlier on about having some sort of symbol, flag, whatever, in the shops, and I think that's brilliant, because I think that, to me, as someone who has never been shy, as Tamsin know, or worried about my sexuality or anything at all, so it would never really occur to me, but seeing something in a shop that said, this is a friendly place, a safe zone, whatever, I think is absolutely crucial to most people, and probably 40 years ago would have been helpful to me. Now being slightly more battle scarred, one doesn't worry, but I think that is absolutely essential, particularly for other members of a diverse group.
Especially if you think about trans people, to be able to go into one of our charity shops that has the logo in the window, because they're going in to buy themselves male clothes or female clothes, but knowing that they're going into a safe place with the staff in there are diverse, aware and friendly. Very small thing, massive to the individual, and would be so helpful.
Historically, coming from Mark's point of view, who worked in the shops, historically, some of your shops were doing that 10, 13 years ago, because Mark used to quite often, and some of the other staff would have someone that was coming in that was changing gender, and they would have things in their size. So say, are you still looking for, because we've got this in your size, your shape, whatever. So that has been happening, but it's just making everybody aware that it was, because it was probably, I wouldn't say sort of quiet, but it certainly didn't sort of discuss it in great detail, but these things were just gently happening under the surface. So what you're looking at now is just bringing it towards being the norm.
And if you live in one of the most, sort of far out places, and you are transitioning or you're trans, and to know now through maybe the Pride events or their papers, their publications, our publications, that that the shop in wherever, Penzance or wherever, is diverse friendly, maybe very rich. Oh, I can go there now. It looked, I always wanted to go in there. I feel more confident now about going in there. So it's those small steps that will make a massive difference to whether it's a small amount of people or a large amount of people. We can look at developing all of those things as we progress, but they can be done very quickly.
Yeah, and also coming back to what I said earlier on, it's that feeling of being safe.
Yes, safety is. I think that's one of the key words. It's safety. Safety in Cornwall for diversity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fascinating, isn't it? So the obvious question now is, how can the community help us? Because I'm assuming that as well as you helping all of us internally to understand and having these conversations, we want to hear from outside of Cornwall Hospice Care.
Well, certainly having met with them earlier this week, and I'm being re-invited to meet with the whole of the board, for want of a better word, they would like to come in and do education sessions here for the staff on inclusivity.
This is Pride.
This is Pride, yeah. But it's not. It is inclusivity. They've broadened it from the LGBTQIA plus, and they do some pretty amazing sessions. They would like us to become part of their sponsorship, so that Cornwall Hospice Care logo is part of their logo, and because that will, because of all the other sponsors they have, from St Austell Brewery to the police to the fire brigade to the universe, it would just spread the word that actually Cornwall Hospice Care is inclusive. But they want to come in as well, and I have a vision of in the future that we will they will come to not only my sessions, and that our staff will not only go to their sessions, but they may join with our education team and come in and offer sessions. And that there may be an opportunity for open days where the community can come and meet the staff, just to dispel, and of course all of this will be publicised, and I'm delighted to say that Hospice UK, I've met with again at the end of last week, and they are publishing our approach, Cornwall Hospice Care. I'm delighted to say Cornwall Hospice Care's approach to working with Cornwall Pride, and they are publishing at the end of this month in their Black Lives Matters publication about our work and what we're aiming to do. And so therefore it puts Cornwall on the map. It's like Gina said earlier, we are the tip of the country, and sometimes we can be forgotten. I don't think we're being forgotten, not now. I think I'm delighted to say that I've also been invited to be part of the Hospice UK policy working group to look at policies for hospice. And as Gina alluded earlier, I should be going to London to the Royal College of Nursing to work with the country's managers and leads on policy development to give my 2 penneth worth to policy development. So I think we're moving quite fast. It's very exciting. I think it's a really exciting time.
I think it might be more than 2 penneth, actually.
Well, no, Neil, let's put gaffer tape over my mouth.
Okay, yeah.
It'll be difficult. Yeah.
Gina, can I just put something to you? And that is, we've talked, and it was always going to be particularly sort of with pride in mind. Really, it is anybody that may feel themselves different in some way. And one point I just want to make on a religious point of view is that in the last census, the Christianity in Cornwall was the highest religion. Then came paganism.
Yes.
So I think the religious diverseness of the county, but also of the country, is something that we need to be aware of, because perhaps a lot of people tend to think the default religion would be Christianity, which quite often it is, but it also could be none. Which is very valid, and also, being a practicing pagan, I was really quite interested that was up there with the rest. So I'm just putting to you, is that on your radar as well?
I think it absolutely is. So, and it's about us asking those questions. So for us, it's about those people who are important to you and what's important to you, not kind of trying to box people into ticking the C of E box or whatever. So we've always been very open about that, certainly from a kind of religious or spiritual perspective. We've also got links with our local homeless here in St Austell. So we have one of our staff nurses on here at Mount Edgcumbe. Actually, we've got really good links with the team in St Austell. So we work very closely around that and recognise that actually coming into the hospice isn't always the right thing for people if actually that's not their lifestyle. So for me it's absolutely all about that outreach and that integration and that working together. You mentioned from veterans. That's another group, so we are working to become more veteran aware, which is an initiative from the looking at the Armed Forces Covenant and working with the NHS. So lots of GPs you'll find are kind of veteran aware and veteran friendly. And it's about it sounds very simple, doesn't it? But it's about recognising the lives that people have had up to now in whatever way that is, and just kind of clocking that as a healthcare professional in this instance, and working with that going forward. And nothing really nowadays should be a shock, but actually we just have to ask those questions and work with the answers.
And I think we're looking for people perhaps from the community who would like to come in and give us their views from outside.
As Mike's alluded to, would be really keen to kind of open up the hospices to actually break some of those barriers down, and for people to come in and see what we offer. We can kind of mix that up with a cup of coffee and some kind of awareness sessions, if that would be helpful. I think it's about bringing some of those groups in, but it's also about us kind of reaching out as well. And I'd be really keen to get some of those focus groups around to look at things like our literature, look at what we're planning, and actually getting some feedback about how that would be useful for the people of Cornwall.
Fantastic. Well, and if you're interested, please contact here at Mount Edgcumbe Hospice, probably the best one because it's where you reside, predominantly Gina, and here we go, the test. The phone number is 01726 65711. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. What an absolutely fascinating discussion, and thank you all for your time. Gina, as always, is sat with me, but we have our guests here, Mike Thomas from our education team and George Kestell, a long-time friend of our charity. It's really good to hear. Well, you've represented that group we want to be talking to, which is the people outside of our charity.
Yeah, and thank you for being asked for that input as well. It really does mean a lot to me.
You've been listening to Two Old Chuffs, A Tale of Two Hospices, the podcast from Cornwall Hospice Care.